I'm Lisa Angela Reed, and welcome to 100 Ways to Filipino, a storytelling project and a time capsule, but mostly a love letter to the Filipino American diaspora. We're all navigating what it means to be Filipino in places far from the motherland. So 100 Ways is for the folks living in between, not feeling Filipino or American. 100 Ways is for the folks trying to bridge the chasm of our culture with a hyphen. And 100 Ways is for the folks searching for the stories we were never told or taught at home or at school, because there's no single way to Filipino. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Rachelle Peraz Ocampo. Rachelle is a proud mom of two young kids, a public health advocate, a communications leader, and a storyteller dedicated to uplifting Filipino voices and communities. Hey, Rachelle.
Hi, Lisa. It's such an honor to be here.
Oh my God, I'm excited to sit with you. I feel like whenever I see you, it's at a NAFA community event and there's 50 million things going on, and I'll catch you on the fly somewhere to where the tail end. And we
Yes.
never have a moment to just talk. So this
Yeah.
is nice.
Yes, this is very nice. Very nice. That's why I appreciate this platform because I'm always the one that's either interviewing
Yeah.
other people, and it's nice to share and dive into I guess my story.
It's nice to have you in the hot seat because you did this to me like what is it, about a month ago from Makilala
Yes,
TV. So that was
yes,
fun.
yes.
So, like when I think back to when we met, I think I met you back in 2022. It was a NAFA. So, for those of folks who don't know what NAFA is, it's a National Federation of Filipino American Associations, and you lead the New York organization, right? And so it was a meeting to discuss redistricting in Queens, and I remember there was the first event that we attended in total Reed family fashion. It was all of us. It was Brian, it was me, and it was my two kids. And what I remember from that event, we had learned so much about why it was meaningful to try and keep the communities of Woodside and Elmhurst intact. But outside of that, outside of the education, what I took away was just how welcoming you were, because we don't live in Queens. We live in Manhattan. And we were just like, I don't know how they're going to treat us. I don't know if they're going to want us or want our contribution, our participation, because again, we don't live in this community. But you were so nice and so kind. And I think you were 7 months pregnant
I
also
probably
at
was.
the
Yes,
time.
2022.
So,
Yes, I was.
yeah, so that was just such a nice first introduction to you.
Yes, it was. I do remember that event. I also learned so much because we had our presenters there talking about how important it was to keep Woodside whole in terms of like the voting and our resources. So just seeing your family there, I got so excited. I was like, I didn't even, I don't know if I asked you where you're from because I just assume Filipino, you're here. It doesn't matter where you're from. Um, you are welcome, especially in Little Manila in Woodside. So it was just so heartwarming that you brought your kids,
Yeah,
which I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that my kids are exposed, are involved, and see what community is all about.
right.
So I love seeing that.
I was just like, shit, they're going to think we're here for the food.
Oh, I love that too. I That's why we always try to make sure there's food at our events. Yes, food is key. Yes.
All right. So we'll come back to what you're doing for the community, but let's just
Mhm.
start with you. And one thing I always ask people, what is your origin story, Rochelle? Who is Rochelle?
Oh, yes, yes. Loaded question, loaded question. Origin story. I usually start off as I am the oldest daughter of Nellie and Ronnie Ocampo, my parents, and I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. It's a mostly white neighborhood called Livatown. Not sure why my parents picked that place, since if you Google it, it has some very disturbing history. But yeah, that's where I ended up staying, and surprisingly enough, since I was the first to be born in America in my generation, my first languages were English and Tagalog. Like my
Hmm.
parents just spoke to me in Tagalog. That's just what I knew. But
Can you
in
speak
school,
Tagalog?
good question. The only thing that I know in Tagalog, Lisa, is hindi ako marunong mag-Tagalog pero nakakaintindi, which is I don't I don't know how to speak. I could only understand.
Yep.
So that's the one phrase that try to down be have down pat. But yeah, I ended up going to speech class
Mhm.
throughout elementary grade school because I had a thick accent. I didn't learn English, from English speaking parents. But yeah, I had to assimilate really quickly. And with that, I lost Tagalog, like being able to speak it. And I still feel a sense of a tinge of resentment towards my parents for like not teaching or instilling that in me, or the importance of speaking Tagalog. But I get it. I understand. Their priority was to assimilate us. That was their priority, to make sure that we felt like that we belonged. So that was definitely a struggle when I was growing up.
I'm trying to remember. There is a song about Levittown. It was like the thing about like ticky tacky houses. It was actually used in, I don't know if you remember this TV show, but it was on Showtime, um, starring Mary Louise Parker, called Weeds. And like
Hmm,
Levittown, if I remember the history, it is literally a town where all the houses are exactly the same. I want to say it was one of those communities that was born post World War II, and so everything was
exactly.
uniform. Yeah, so, like, it's interesting because now as I, like, picture you growing up in this very uniform suburban Long Island community,
Yes.
being one of the few Filipino girls, if not the I mean, you're not the only. Were you the only Filipino girl in town?
Other than my sister, we were, and it was my brother, we were the only Filipinos in grade school. It
Mhm.
wasn't until high school where I saw there was, oh my gosh, there's other Filipinos out here. Yeah, yeah, we were the only Filipinos in the neighborhood until I found out in high school that there were more of us.
Yeah, yeah. What were you like as a child? I guess if people were to ask you, Rochelle, where are you from? Right? When they really mean, Rochelle, what ethnicity or what is your
Yes.
background? How would you have answered this if you were like, let's 6 years old?
Ah, I was a sad child. I was
What?
a sad. I don't know why, but I was always samangot,
Hmm.
which means like sad face.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know why. I'm trying to figure out like why was I so sad? Because in the pictures, like I don't smile often, and I remember as a child I was always just not happy.
Hmm.
So I developed RBF very early, and it wasn't until like 10th or 11th grade. I remember this clearly. I remember 10th or 11th grade where I removed my glasses, I had contacts, I had no more braces, and I just started feeling more confident about myself. I joined more sports, more activities in high school, and yeah, I was not sumangot anymore.
That's
but
that's so
yeah, I
funny.
remember like that transition of just me being a sad child.
Would you have described yourself as like, because I remember growing up, because I didn't know, people would ask me, "Where are you from?" And I'd be like, "Well, I'm Filipino," knowing that, or the assumption in my head was Filipino, but not from Philippines, because clearly has an American accent,
Mm,
clearly carries herself like an American. But it never occurred to me to call myself Filipino American at the time, because frankly, in my mind, the white people were Americans, right?
mhm.
And, I was Filipino. Like, how did you describe your identity?
I definitely knew that I was Filipino, and thankfully I was surrounded by other family members, like my
Hmm.
cousins were thankfully very close to my cousins who lived in Queens, in Staten Island, but we were the only ones in Long Island, and I didn't even think that I was different. Thankfully, I didn't experience direct racism,
Hmm.
even though I was in a mostly white neighborhood, or not even just I wasn't exposed to that, and I didn't realize I was different until college, really late. And I was like, wow, there's a whole other world here, um, of just diversity. And that's where I really claimed myself to be Filipino and wanting to learn and immerse myself in the Filipino community, in the history, in advocacy. That was definitely the transition.
So you came to this realization during college. I guess what were those signs that started to tell you, okay, maybe I am a little different. Maybe I am this other? Like, what were those signs or signals that helped you understand that?
The sense of community. I felt like such a belonging when I joined the Filipino group at St. John's University in Queens, and I just felt like that I belonged. They
Hmm.
were so welcoming. Um, they they empowered me to go into leadership positions, um, plan events, and just lead. And I took it from there and just kept leading. And yeah, I love that feeling of being able to be connected to the community through that way. Just the sense of belonging.
Well, I'm going to ask you the opposite. The
Mm.
opposite of that question, right? As you were growing up, before you got to that point, what were those things from childhood into high school through college that were signs that I am different and do I belong? Were there any things that made you question what your place was or space was?
Yes, I now that you bring that up, yes, I'm now triggering
Sorry.
memories. Yeah, I mean, I know mention this as an example, but it really is true. Lunch,
Mhm.
like whenever we would bring lunch, I never had Lunchables. I hardly had like those cheese as snacks. Um, it was Filipino food. It was
Yeah.
food that my parents would make us. It was never like typical.
You didn't get the
Um,
bologna sandwich lunch.
no, no. I mean, maybe my mom would do like turkey and mayo, but
Mhm.
I remember like having fish and it had its head, like a fish head, and I don't know, they were not exposed to this, and I was like, "What do you mean? It's fish. What are you talking about?" Um, but yeah, it was just so startling for people to see a full fish in my dish, as lunch, and it was that was definitely a moment that I was like, "Okay, maybe this is different." And also, when my friends would come over, they knew that they were gonna smell like
Mhm.
food. Like they were just gonna be immersed in like the smell of lumpia or pancit or something such that has a strong smell. And I didn't realize that that was not normal.
Well, because that's what we grow up with,
Yeah,
right?
never
I
questioned
mean,
it.
I think like all of my non-Filipino friends cannot stand the sight of the head on the fish because their meat and seafood are intended to be discombobulated objects. You don't really know that it was once an animal, right?
Yes,
Whereas we're going to eat from snout to tail and the feet, right? That's just
yes.
what we do. Um, so you're a diehard New Yorker, right? So you're born in Long Island, you went to school and did your master's here in New York State, right? What does being a New Yorker mean? If you were to talk about your New York experience, I guess how would you describe what it is to be a New Yorker for you?
Uh, I mean, overall, the sense of being a New Yorker for me is someone who understands how complex New York is, who has lived through the different neighborhoods of New York. So even though I was born and raised in Long Island, I moved to Queens to college, spent 8 years in Chinatown, Manhattan, and now back in Queens
Mhm.
to raise my own family. I was able to get a sense of like respect and pride of what it means to like live, to eat, to thrive, and to suffer as a
Mhm.
New Yorker, to commiserate with other New Yorkers. So yeah, it's a lot of that. And for me, I mean, some technical things that I know that I'm a New Yorker. I walk like a
Mhm.
New Yorker. I feel like that I walk fast with a stride of purpose. I remember going into different countries in Europe, even in the Philippines. I was like, pick up the pace, people. We need to
Yep.
go. We have places to be. So yeah, I feel like those mannerisms and just that understanding of that pride of being a New Yorker.
It's so funny. The whole purposeful walk, one thing that drives me crazy, people who are not from New York do not know how to fucking walk. I'm not sorry for saying this. It's 4 people wide on the sidewalk. I mean, it should be like 2 people coming and going, and that should be like, the breadth of it, right? If you take
You
up
would
more than
think.
2 people wide, I know, and then so you're just kind of, "Oh, fuck, now I'm off the curb just to, like, go past." So,
Yes.
because you grew up so close to the culture, right? How would you say your connection to Filipino culture has evolved from childhood to adulthood? How is it the same? Because you're raising 2 kids of your own. What's the evolution been like for you?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, uh, my main exposure when growing up to Filipino community is my cousins, my family. But we would go, my family, mostly my dad, would go to these like huge Filipino basketball tournaments. And this is where I would be exposed to more Filipinos than I have ever experienced in my life in one area. So there's these huge basketball tournaments from like Toronto to Virginia, to Boston, and it was a really fun family trip. But that's really where I got a lot of my Filipino exposure as a child is the Filipino basketball tournaments, the Filipino Day Parade, where
Mhm.
people come from like all over the country to visit. I was one of those people who just like, wow, this is the most Filipinos I've ever seen. And the Philippine Fiesta, which is now called Fiesta in America in New Jersey, it's like a whole Filipino convention where thousands of Filipinos go. So I look forward to those events every year with my family. Um, but now, in terms of evolving, I feel like I'm the one that's hosting those events that are bringing people together, and it just fills me with so much joy knowing that I can contribute in that way. Um, and for my family, I mean, you've seen me already with my kids in
Mhm.
tow, whether I have one or both of them at an event. Yeah, I bring them to expose them, to hopefully let them see how safe and welcoming the community is, um, and that they could see that and as a resource, and that I could be a resource, hopefully.
So before we dive into kind of some of the work that you're doing today, like, what did you wanna be when you grew up?
Oh, so typical. What did I want to be, or what did my parents want me to be?
Well, let's start okay, what did your parents want you to be, and what did you wanna be when you were
I
a kid?
feel like it was so ingrained to me that I was going to work in healthcare
Mhm.
and that I was going to be a doctor. So I don't even know if I had another dream or what I wanted to be when I grew up because I always wanted to be a doctor. Like that's just conditioned me to be. Um, but again, like in college, even though I went in as a physician assistant student, like a PA, I ended up graduating instead in healthcare administration and being more involved with the Filipino community. So it that Filipino community kind of took over my Filipino doctor dream, and it's definitely shifted. So even though I'm still in healthcare and I want to help people, I help people in a different way.
So, your connection and your desire to really work with the Filipino community has really been something that's run parallel to your professional career in many ways, right? Either it was
Yes,
embedded in it or it was running alongside it. I almost feel like you can't really separate the 2 tracks
yes,
because, in many ways, it's like you have this, like, not to set aside your mom. I mean, you really have 3 roles that you're playing, right? You've got your professional role, you've got Rochelle, the community advocate, and storyteller, because I think those 2 things are kind of blended together,
absolutely.
right?
Yes,
And then you have, your mom role, right? I guess I'm guessing from what you've said here, once it kind of took hold, it was impossible for you to separate. So it's not really like there's a duality here because they're not like it's not like yin and yang.
yes.
It's kind of symbiotic
It's
for you.
so it's so connected, and I use that. I use it to my advantage of the resources that I have in my professional capacity and in in uh, integrate it into the community work that I do because there's so many spaces where I represent both. Like
Mhm.
I'm in calls where I represent both NAFA and my health center, and it's all for the better good of the AAPI community. Like that's the whole whole process of it. And I am so fortunate that I get to do both at the same time, or all three at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fun, it's fulfilling, and I'm very fortunate that I get to do it, and I get paid to do things that I actually enjoy.
I guess I can see very easily what the benefits are having you being from the culture, advocating for this community, but have you ever felt that your Filipino identity has, been a challenge in some of the work that you do?
As a challenge, I don't know. I'm an optimistic person, so I don't even see it as a challenge. I feel it as an opportunity. Um, yeah, I always use my Filipino-ness to make sure that I am at the table, to make sure that I represent, to make sure that I am there to build community. So in terms of challenge, I haven't seen it as a challenge actually. I see it I've seen more of opportunity. That's such a the way I responded sounded like that I was like in a job interview. I just realized that, but it's true though. Like it's I haven't seen it as a challenge because I feel like that I'm in circles, these coalitions, these Asian American coalitions in the work that I do all align, and they just work so like what you said, symbiotically together.
I'm gonna ask the question in a slightly different way. Thinking about it differently, because when you're dealing with the Filipino community, there are a lot of entrenched values, a lot of entrenched behaviors that sometimes need to be overturned. So, in your work, I have to imagine you've been able to do that successfully to the benefit of the community. Is there any instance where you've changed perception within our community to the community's benefit that you're particularly proud of?
Oh gosh, that is a big question. I when you start talking about like Filipino values, there's so many there's been groups that I've been involved with where Filipino leaders that have so much potential, so much like energy and love for the community, but then they just get jaded from
Mm,
all like the toxic crab mentality, the toxic energy that people use of like bringing people down. And I feel like that I have been able to navigate through those challenges because I see the importance of just keep going. Like, I'm not here to mess around. I want to build a Filipino community center. I don't want to get distracted by drama or people
mhm.
who don't believe in me or believe in this mission. Like, I don't have time for that. I have 30 other things that are on my mind. So I kind of just zone those those people or those issues out and just focus like what is the bigger goal here. Because for me, like with my work with NAFA and in the community, I see that it's the goal is to build generational wealth for the Filipino community. And I see this brick and mortar, this physical space for the community as that way to bring resources, sustainable resources to the community. So yeah, I zoned things out. I was able to navigate and hopefully for the better of the community.
No, but that's an important, like, attribute to have because sometimes within our community, there is so much freaking noise,
Oh,
and sometimes we are our own worst enemy when it comes to doing things for the benefit of not just one, but all, and it's totally at odds with our community embracing, like, the whole notion of capital. It's kind of at odds with it, but we see it, and it's so prevalent sometimes, especially, like, if we're trying to navigate uncharted territory. Coming back to your community center, under your leadership at NAFA, you were able to successfully get pretty significant check from
yes.
from oh god, who was it?
Grace,
Julie
yeah, Representative Grace Meng.
Grace
Yeah.
Meng.
So from the
Yeah,
federal government, yeah, it's the single largest grant for a Filipino group to receive in New York history.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's
That's amazing.
incredible.
I
It's
I
it's
can't
incredible.
I can't wait to see it really take shape. I know that this is something you're actively working on.
Yes, yes, yes. If anyone is willing to come out and support and bring their skills and expertise, please, we are welcoming anyone and everyone, because this is definitely a community effort.
So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about your work, and this one, you have your work with Race Pinay, and I'd like to know a little bit more about what that was because I saw some fantastic pictures on the website. So it looked a little theatrical, so it looks kind of
Yes.
awesome. And then talk to me a little bit about Makilala TV because what I was struck by with both of these, like, programs that you developed, it really is about bringing the stories of our community and showcasing our community, even though it's in different ways, it is still very much focused on storytelling.
Yes, absolutely. It has been such an honor to be connected to those two platforms. It gives me chills just knowing that I was able to be involved with them. So Raise Panay, it for and Makilala TV, they're definitely two different platforms, two different audiences. But Raise Panay was originally developed to counter as a Filipino version of vagina monologues. So
Mhm.
that was like the first initiation of the idea. And now it has evolved to like a theater piece where intergenerational Filipinas um, can participate in like this complex storytelling process. So that that platform to be able to share our stories as Filipinas is so empowering, and to hear that process of how we were able to go through it, to present it in public is a once in a lifetime experience. And I wish we had more capacity and resources to do more. But yeah, it's been a fun process. For Makilala TV, I remember getting the Facebook message from, I think, Christina Pastor, one of the other lead co-hosts and founders. She's like, "Oh, I'm thinking of doing this TV show. Are you interested in doing it?" I was like, "Do you I don't want to do this. I don't want to tell people my opinions. I'm okay. I'm fine." But she's like, "No, we need like a younger voice." And this was like over 10 years ago. So I was still young that time. But
You're still young. Please.
but it has evolved, and uh, it has evolved but also has remained stagnant because, again, this is all volunteer. We do it once a month. We do tapings and interview different groups of people, but I wouldn't continue doing it unless it was not fun. Like, I want to keep doing it until it's not fun anymore. And to me, learning and hearing other people's stories and being able to bring that out in like a TV format is so cool to me. So I hope that we can continue doing that too.
So, continuing on this thread of storytelling, what is kind of amazing, I mean, social media has its pitfalls, but one of
Mm.
the things that has been kind of incredible to witness over the past couple of years is the rise of communities that are really
Yes.
focused. I mean, I've seen more so for like Filipinas versus like young men, but you've got rising Filipinas, you've got within the past year, I don't know if you've seen the Ganda Girls
Yep.
Club,
Yes. Of
right?
course. Yes.
You know, what is your perspective and why do you think it is that these new groups are kind of emerging to really support young Filipino women?
I love it. I am all for it. I wish we had that type of support when we were younger. Yes, I could always, look up to my mom and just be like, yes, I'm in awe of all the sacrifice that you've given us. But being able to have a support system like those groups on social media is so um, empowering. Just being able to know that there's groups there that share that same sentiment of yeah, just sisterhood. I love it. I love seeing that, and it's it's heartening to see that my Addie, my 2-year old, can also look forward to those types of circles too.
One thing I wonder, just as you're talking, I think when we were growing up, when Filipinos formed communities, it was social, but I felt that the expression and orientation of the community was more outward, right? We would form a group with the sole purpose of giving us presence in business. You know, you've got all of the doctors and nurses associations that are
Yes.
all Filipino. And so it's a support system, but it's, as I think about it, it's more externally focused. Whereas, groups like Rising Filipinas and the Ghana Girls Club, it is a social community, but it is more inward in its orientation. It's about supporting you. I think what was kind of cool with Ghana Girls Club is they'll do things which are like learn Tagalog like nights.
Hmm.
And they'll bring in like other speakers that are focused on helping them kind of understand, how they could be thinking about themselves, or they're like mental health resource. So that notion of support is intended to help the individual, and by helping the individual, it makes them better equipped to kind of support the community. So I find that it's a turn. It's a
It is.
turn, I think, from where we've been in the past. And so you talked about things like Makilala TV, the things that you love doing. You do it because they bring you joy and because it's fun. Um, I guess what what for you would be, like, not fun? Like, or I guess maybe the better way to think of it is, at what point do you think it's time to kind of exit? And what I mean by that is, you forget what I said at the beginning. Forget about not being fun, but at what point do you think, if you were to leave NAFA, right?
Hmm.
At what point do you think you would be ready to do that?
Oh my gosh, Lisa, I'm ready now. I'm ready to transition out. If anyone wants to take my role, come and take it. I'm totally ready. I'm at an interesting stage in my life because I have my two kids. Like
Mhm.
I can see myself immersed as being like part of the PTA and like going with that 110%. So I'm definitely ready, and I I remember getting the advice from Loida Nicholas Lewis because I was going through some stuff when I was pregnant, and just I needed advice of like how to balance community and like two kids.
Mhm.
And she said, Rochelle, you can do it all. You can, just not at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, true, valid, very valid. But it made me realize, to of course set priorities and not say yes to everything, and learning how to delegate. And for me, I would love to delegate this community center, this NAFA to the future leaders, to other people. Um, it's hard though. It's really hard to find somebody and to find a group of people that you can rely and trust in, because it's my baby, it's
Right.
my third baby, this community center. So I want to make sure it's in good hands, and if I have to build a team to do that, then I that's what I need to do. But yes, I am ready now, Lisa, to transition out, because yeah, there's just that other aspect of my life that I know that I can contribute and push forward, but I also want to make sure that this other baby is taken care of. So yes, the time is now.
The time is now. Too funny. Too funny. Yeah, I truly believe that there is always time for the things that you want to do, right? And
Mm,
so that means, like, not doing the things you don't wanna do and don't make you happy, right?
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just really, it comes down to, like, how do you wanna deploy your energy at any given moment, right? And I think for Filipinos, sometimes the act of saying no is so hard because culturally, we were literally indoctrinated and bred to just say yes and
yeah.
go with
Be
it.
people pleasers. Yes,
Be people
yeah,
pleasers and just
absolutely.
don't rock the boat, just kind of go with it. But I mean, I do wanna say this, like, I am so grateful for the leadership that you've brought to the community, because, and I know this very much firsthand, the folks from NAFA and a lot of the groups that are kind of aligned and, connected with NAFA, um, this generation of young Filipino Americans that are coming up are so much more civically minded. They're just so kind of engaged. I almost feel like this generation has bred to be, even if they don't call themselves activists, there is the spirit of activism and activation that is just endemic to this cohort. I think it's a Gen Z thing, in many
Yes,
ways.
I think so.
Um, and so and I see it in my son, right? Coming back to that very first NAFA meeting when they were talking about testifying, my son had 50 million questions. His hand kept shooting up in the air, and everyone was
Mhm.
so kind and they let him ask his questions. But then afterwards, I can't remember the woman's name, but she said he should go testify. And this is when we revealed that we are not from Queens. So, like, and they're like, no, no, no. If you feel a cultural connection to the community of Little Manila, you should go testify. He did. He ended up testifying. It's on the internet.
Yep,
And,
it's on public record.
if you
He's there
look him up
forever.
online, I'm not going to say his name, but like if you were to look him up, if you knew him and you like looked him up, the first thing that comes up is
Oh.
his like his little speech that he gave there. I guess would be curious to know like what are you hoping to see because you are an optimist. Like what would you love to see from this next generation of Filipino Americans?
Yeah, I definitely see the conviction, the activism in that group. But there's also that's the group that you're exposed to, Lisa. There's
Mm,
also another group that's not exposed at all, and those are the people that they have different ways of connecting to the community, and one of them could be like learning Tagalog or learning how to be part of the Filipino community. So it yeah, I feel like that for anyone that wants to be involved in the community, I hope to see more empathy, not just conviction of like advocating for like what is right, but really more empathy for people who don't believe in the same things as you, who don't look like you, um, and hopefully people don't expect like that idea of things to be handed to you. Like you need to, now that I have experience in the community, you have to ask for things straight up. Do
yeah.
not go around and just try to be nice. And yes, it's nice, good to be nice, but you have to be straight up to to people, um, and ask exactly what you want. Um, yeah, so more empathy, and grit. We
Hmm.
need more grit. Just because somebody says no doesn't mean that that's the final no. Like you should really look for other ways to get what you need and you think that is right for the community.
I think this is where we need to tap into our spirit of resourcefulness and just channel it in other directions because Filipinos are scrappy,
Yes.
right? We can make castles out of, just mounds of garbage, like literally. So, you know, if we could just unlock that energy and that spirit with like what would be possible if the 4.4 million Filipinos in this country just unlocked and unleashed our collective resourcefulness? What might we be able to do? That would be fucking phenomenal.
So much. We would have so much power if we really took advantage of our resourcefulness.
Yeah,
A lot of people are just in their own little bubble, which I get it. That's a safe thing to do. But to really understand where other people are coming from can help you unlock those other resources, because then you could understand what's preventing them from helping you, from
right,
helping in the community. So yeah,
right.
it's definitely a twofold there.
Yeah. Okay, are you ready for the speed round?
Oh my God, I forgot about the speed
There's a
round.
speed round.
Okay, all right, go
Okay,
ahead, let's do this.
so what is one thing about you that no one expects that can't be found online?
That can't be found online. Oh
Can't be in your
no.
LinkedIn, can't be in your socials. Fine, it can be online, but it needs to be hard to find online.
Okay. I can bend my elbow in a very not safe way.
Are you double jointed in your elbow? Can you do
Yes,
it now? No, I'm
basically.
just kidding.
Yes. Yeah, I can't, I mean,
Let me
I don't
see.
know if you could see
Oh,
it,
that's
but
crazy. Yes, I can
it's like
totally see it.
goes in
That's
a, yes.
wild. Oh my
So
one day
physical trait.
when I see you in person, I
Yeah.
can do that with my shoulder and turn it all the way around. It's crazy. It's kind of gross. So that's why
Yes,
we have to do this in person because then you get the full effect
a
of
full effect.
it's the full effect. Okay. You are being asked to speak at an event, which happens often. What's your hype song? What are you marching out to?
Oh, hype song?
Yeah.
Ooh. Um, oh my gosh. Definitely don't know that. Um, I mean, right now, because my daughter is really into it, is the Bruno Mars APT song. Yes, like the moment, like you just can't stop with that beat, and that's where I'm going for.
That is a
Yeah,
fun one to come out to
it
anyway,
is. It is.
because
You
it's
just
so boppy.
automatically, yeah, you just automatically have a good time. You know it's going to be a good time. You're good. You're surrounded by good people. It's a good song.
So I'm gonna ask you a doozy question that we do not
Okay.
have to use, okay?
Okay. Okay.
And I'm gonna warn you, this is a question that would annoy the shit out of me growing
Okay.
up. So that's why I'm gonna ask you for fun.
Go ahead.
And again, we may or may not use it. Okay. If they were making a movie about your life, who would play you?
Who would play me? I think it's because I just really enjoy her as like as an actor, is Zendaya.
Okay.
I would love for her to play me because I feel like that she has such a cool personality. Also, she's uh, gorgeous. Um, yeah, I would love for her to play me, but she's not Filipina. So, yeah, sure.
The reason why I ask this question sometimes is because, and the reason why this used to annoy the crap out of me was because of the lack of representation on film. We tend to go with people from other races. I didn't know Filipino actors or actresses. I don't
No.
know anything about their characters or who they played. Let me tell you, you look like so and so. Who the fuck that is? So
Yes.
that's why sometimes I like asking the question. Okay, last speed round question.
Mm.
As parents, our kids are watching everything we do. What is the one thing you'd like your children to learn from you?
I'd love for them to learn to empathize with others, to learn more about people outside of what they look or believe in, if they have the means to give back. And I've actually been incepting this to my son already. Um, Actually, it wasn't even me that brought it up first. He's like my 4-year-old is like, mommy, do you know what empathy means? I was like, what do you mean? You're asking me what it means? And he's like, mommy, it's because it's when you are kind to people, um, and you want to learn where they're coming from. I was like, oh, okay. That's good that you know that. Where did you hear that from? It's like, oh, daddy taught me. I was like, oh, okay. That's good
Oh,
that we're
that's
on the
so
same
sweet.
page.
Oh,
That's
that
my
is so sweet.
husband. But yeah, it's just now he knows that word, and hopefully it'll trickle down and he'll put it into practice. But now we we say it more often so that he could be more exposed of like, oh, that's an example of you being empathetic. So yes, I would like for them to continue learning how to be empathetic to others.
Okay, so the real last question.
Okay.
How do you Filipino, Rochelle?
Oh, how do I Filipino? Uh, I honestly is just finding community, making sure that I feel that I help those who need to get connected to the resources that they need. I feel like that I need to give back in that way, not even just financially, but in a way that I know that I have the capacity to serve. So, in terms of being doing Filipino is serving the community.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle, for answering all of my questions. So
Yes,
it's nice to finally sit and speak with you, outside of the events, because I always love running into you. But again, we never have the time to just sit and do this. So thank you so much for making the time because you've got 50 different hats to wear and
we
5
both
million roles.
do. We
So
both do. Oh my goodness, you are a powerhouse. You are a powerhouse. I love that you're doing this and that you're providing this platform, because really we all need it. We need this uplifting of other Filipinos, and thank you for doing the work that you do.
well, thank you. So, all right, Rochelle,
Yes.
have a great rest of your day. And thanks to everyone for listening.